Hello and welcome to Minus the Hangover, the NoLo Drinks podcast that reaches the parts other podcasts can't reach. With me, Christoph Phillips.
And with me, Pete Mason.
In this episode, we're doing things a little differently, counting down through the global top 10 best-selling NoLo beers and treating ourselves, or will it be a treat, to our usual in-depth tasting of three of them. Bavarian brand Erdinger's alcohol-free Weissbier, jawohl! Italian Peroni Nastro Azzurro 0% lager, and Formula One sponsor and Dutch mega brand Heineken with their 0% no-alcohol lager. So yes, spoiler alert, these three beers do indeed feature in the top 10, but where, Pete, where? That's the question.
Well, indeed. I mean, I've got my guesses as to where, let's say, Heineken might end up, for example. But yeah, kind of Peroni and the Erdinger one, you know, it's not that kind of big in the UK. Maybe it's massive in its home country of Germany. Yeah, so I do wonder where that's going to be. And I wonder if there's going to be any other kind of surprises along the way as well.
Well, indeed, we're going to find out, Pete. We shall find out. And you know what? Without further ado, let's turn our attention to the global top 10 best-selling NoLo beers.
Sounds good.
Well, actually, Pete, before we get to the rankings, we need something of a disclaimer. You see, Any list like this is kind of problematic if you pretend it's definitive. So this is very much my list, or a list. It's not the list, and I'm doing kind of rabbit ears with that. And it's because so much is open to interpretation, right? So I just wanted to get that out there, and I think we should move swiftly on.
Hang on a second. So what you're saying is you're making this all up, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, that's a very, very cynical way of saying it. But look, there's actually quite a bit here that we need to kind of probe into. So actually indulge me just a little bit, because I think this is worth getting into, just so that we're on the same page, and so that when we do work through the list, it kind of makes sense, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. It'll be a really boring collection of facts and figures, one being stacked up against another. No one wants that. Okay. So let's just probe into it. You see, breweries actually, I'm going to say, on a global scale, such as for this list, I think it's fair to call them not just breweries, but huge multinational corporations a lot of the time. They're relatively opaque about the sales and revenue their NoLos generate, and they're opaque for several reasons. Firstly, they view their NoLo products as simply one amongst many of their many brands. So they would often, actually I would say usually, they don't distinguish between NoLos and their alcoholic products when publishing their sales or revenue data to shareholders, which is our primary source of data for what's what with NoLo sales worldwide.
You are kind of reliant on their figures, obviously. Yes, that makes sense.
A little bit, yeah. It makes it difficult for anyone to pin down exactly how well or how poorly sales of their NoLo products are going, which is probably, as you say, by design, as companies, of course, always want to put a positive spin on things. But then again, they are hamstrung by honesty laws in relation to reporting to shareholders. So there often exists this somewhat grey area that we have to pick our way through. And it ain't always easy. I'm just going to say it. It's not always easy.
No, sure. I think it's a fair point, really. You know, there's a lot of stuff to kind of wade through. And in terms of the financial figures, yes, I'm sure like the total volume of sales is going to be up there, and maybe even the kind of overall profit. But yeah, why would they split it from brand to brand?
Even if we could come up with a reason why we would like them to, they don't. And that's kind of been the problem. Secondly, there are difficulties in how we offset any research and development costs or brand launch costs or advertising costs, etc. for these new NoLo products. So sales could be huge, but are they profitable, and does profitability even matter for a list like this? I mean, I suspect not, but to some people, and when I was doing my research, it clearly does. And it highlights a third problem: revenue versus sales. So that is, you could have lower sales in a rich country, and thus those products are sold at a higher price, which raises more revenue, but the sales themselves could be lower than somewhere else where they sell for cheaper. So which is best selling? You can see, Pete, what a mess it can be, and why, as I've said, it's kind of impossible to have a definitive list.
Yeah, I think your average understanding of the term kind of best selling, I would say, is just in terms of units sold. whether or not it's done on a kind of a profitable basis, whether you're making, 50p on a litre or £1 on a litre profit, it doesn't really make that much difference. And certainly when you're talking about big companies like these with money to burn as well, you're going to want to sell, if not at a loss, then you've got deep pockets and maybe you can afford to push other companies out of the market by selling cheaper than they can, which involves...
to get that foothold,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been part of what I've had to kind of look at. I've really looked at a number of different factors. I've pulled together a whole range of stats on revenue and size of the market and reach of the market and sales numbers across those markets to try and interpret, and yes, interpret is the word, a list that seems to make logical sense. But there are always caveats involved, and not least that numbers shift all the time, so nothing is set in stone. And I've tried to balance all that nebulous shifting data with a sort of, social impact angle, something along the lines of the global brand reach and the prominence the brands are giving to their NoLo products, i.e. Heineken Zero specifically and not simply Heineken in general, sponsoring Formula One. More on that later. So on the one hand, there's an attempt to apply hard data. On the other, there's almost the feel of the product, which of course comes with its own problems, but I don't want to get into all of that right now. Rest assured, Pete, I've done my level best to be fair and representative of the quote-unquote real picture of global NoLo bestsellers, i.e. not just revenue and not just sales, and compile that into a workable top 10 list. Make sense?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be an element of subjectivity when it comes to this kind of thing. You don't have the access to precise sales data for each of these brands. You've got to take account of the fact that a lot of these companies are better known than others and are sold in more countries than others.
Like I say, it's been a complicated thing, and we always put a lot of time into our little features, our big chat where we explore a different aspect of the industry. This one's taken a while because it's not as straightforward as I hoped it might be. But I will say, after all that, I really do feel like I need a drink. So let's get on with our top 10 rankings, 10th to 8th place.
Sounds good.
So in 10th place, we've got our old favourite Lucky Saint Unfiltered Lager. Lucky Saint will, of course, be familiar to anyone in the UK, and we tasted it ourselves on episode 3. Pete, what are your thoughts on it?
It's very nice. Yes, it is a favourite of mine, absolutely. I drink it reasonably regularly. Yeah, what else could you say?
I think it's pretty ubiquitous, even synonymous with the UK NoLo market. We touched on that in the tasting that we did. It's the most widely available NoLo lager on tap in the UK. And if you go on their website, you see a map of all the places where they're covered on tap, and it's just a map of their icons. So they really are, across the length and breadth of Britain. But you can also get it in Germany, Belgium and the Netherlands online, but I think also some specialist retailers as well. So they have branched out. But let's just say it's a real market leader. It's in every supermarket, even probably every tiny corner shop across the UK. Like I say, very often on tap. And for a reason. We really liked it, didn't we?
Yeah, it's a good product. It's worth saying that even though it's a British brand, it is a German drink. Yes. And I do wonder how successful it is in Germany, because obviously there's kind of more competition out there in terms of these non-multinational brands, which I know we'll have at least one of later on, because we've already talked about tasting it. But yeah, it's a good beer. Like, fundamentally, it's a good beer. It's been around for a few years. It sells very well. So yeah, I can see why it's on this list, even if it's just at 10th place.
Now, just a little bit of stats on it, just to bring us up to speed. It's 0.5% ABV. It's de-alcoholized. But there is no alcoholic version. This is a brewery that exists purely for NoLo drinks. It was launched in 2018, and it's now expanded to include an IPA, which we tasted way back in episode 1, and a new lemon lager, which I have here. I have some, Pete, waiting for a future tasting.
Very nice.
Now, direct sales figures are not available. And again, I don't want to get too bogged down in these kind of specifics with any of these rankings. But the company has reported a 180% year-on-year sales revenue growth early on. That's actually slowed a little bit. In 2022, Lucky Saint generated $3 million in retail sales, with total sales across all their channels reaching $20 million. So we're kind of getting, pushing into big numbers. But that was 2022, and it's come a long way. As I said, the rate of growth has slowed a little, and they're now posting things more like 69% volume sales growth year on year in the 12 months leading up to January 2025. So still very healthy, very positive, and pushing into new markets across Europe, but it's slowed down from where it was. So let's move on to 9th place, Asahi Super Dry 0.0%. I'm going to ask you actually straight off, Pete, have you ever tried this?
I have. It's actually been a little while, and I think I tried it a couple of years ago. And at that point, a lot of its competitors hadn't quite caught up to the sort of the very best kinds of NoLo lager. So certainly at that point, Asahi was absolutely a strong favourite of mine. As I say, the market has moved on slightly nowadays, so I'm sure it's still delicious because I'm sure it won't have changed. But yeah, it's a good beer. It is a good beer.
I'm not sure I've had it, but I do know Asahi, the alcoholic version, the standard version, and I quite like it. So if they have managed to capture that kind of crisp, dry, the clean flavours that it's famous for, then that's possibly something I might like. I think we should definitely flag up any on this list that we haven't tasted or done a tasting for a future episode. We'll try and return to those as we can. So it's available in Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, Waitrose. It was launched in 2023 by Asahi Europe and International, which is a pretty big multinational. And as I say, it's a non-alcoholic version of Japan's #1 best-selling beer. So the only hard numbers I could find in Japan, it's growing 21.4%. It's now generating kind of $150.5 million. So it's kind of making bigger money. And you can see that it's the kind of step up that we've got above the previous Lucky Saint. So yeah, we're getting big numbers going on here, but it's still only 9th place on our list. So in 8th place, Krombacher non-alcoholic Pilsner. Pete, I'll ask you again, have you tried this one?
No, I don't think I have. I've certainly heard of the name Krombacher, and I suspect I've had one of their standard beers in the past, although, again, not for quite some time.
Sure.
But in terms of this beer itself, I don't know if I've even heard of it.
It's a bit tricky to get hold of, to be honest. It seems to be really dominant in Germany. It's Germany's biggest beer brand, and they seem to have carried that over into, selling their NoLos very well. So while we can say it's limited to, a single market or largely a single market, it's a pretty big market for selling beer, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Yeah, the Germans are quite famous for drinking lots of beer, absolutely. The standard one, and also with the non-alcoholic side, the low alcohol and no alcohol side of things. Germany's a massive market for that. And it doesn't hurt that actually it's a big country. There's something like 80 million people who live there. So it's bigger than the UK or France.
This is an alcohol-free Pilsner, which is a style of lager. It's pale, golden, with a crisp kind of malt body, floral hop notes, clean, refreshing finish. But it very directly is trying to emulate the classic Krombacher Pilsner, which, again, I'm not sure I've had. I probably have, but I'm just not that aware of it. But it specifically is brewed under the German purity laws. Can you remember what they're called, Pete?
Obviously, it is the Reinheitsgebot.
I mean, you schooled us on that before. And,
indeed.
It kind of went in my head, but I did have to Google it again just to make sure I'd got it right. Yes, these are... Well, I'll tell you what, Pete, you just give us a quick rundown of what they are.
So essentially, they date back to at least the 16th century in Bavaria and possibly earlier than that. And what it means is that you can only use certain ingredients in beer. And that is barley malt and hops and I think water was the other ingredient. I think they don't actually mention yeast, and I think the reason for that is that they didn't really see it as an ingredient because they didn't add it to every batch. They reused it from the previous batch, so I think they didn't really kind of see it as an ingredient, therefore it wasn't covered by the laws. Interesting.
So it's 0.5%, although it's often listed as 0.0. It's vegan friendly. The reason I'm laughing is I'll come to it. It's vegan friendly. It's not generally available in UK supermarkets, but you can find it online. But the thing that made me laugh was going to their website and reading up on it, because it suggests that it's best served cold. This is the most German thing you're ever going to hear, Pete. It's best served cold with sausages, pretzels, or salads.
Yeah. Well, if they'd added sauerkraut to that list as well, I think you'd have got the most stereotypical German diet ever.
There you go. So, look, it's a big seller in a very specific market, but a proud market for the and a proud tradition of beer in Germany. So, maybe that speaks volumes. We'll try and get hold of some in the future, I think.
Sounds good.
So let's go on to 7th place, Erdinger Alkoholfrei, and this, we're actually going to go for a full tasting.
Ooh.
We're in Germany again. This is a well-established German brand. It's consistently recognised as being one of the top-selling non-alcoholic beers in Germany, but it is available elsewhere, including in the UK. You can get it in Tesco's, Waitrose, Asda, Morrison's, basically everywhere I looked. It was popping up. It's actually sold in over 100 different countries across 5 continents. So they really have got a global reach on this one. Now, one thing I want to flag up within all of that before we actually get to our full tasting is that this Erdinger Alkoholfrei is specifically marketed as an isotonic beverage. It's an isotonic drink. It's not even listed as a beer drink or something like that. It's labelled as refreshingly isotonic. Now, Pete, we had a bit of a conversation about this because I assumed going in that was a kind of gimmick that they'd done.
Okay.
I wasn't that aware of what being isotonic meant. But this is a genuine thing, and we have real-world examples of how this is being used. So, first off, Pete, talk us through what's going on here with isotonic and it being not even labelled as a beer drink.
Well, I don't know why it's not called beer, to be honest, because they're certainly made as a beer. So it's a bit of a mystery to me as to why they haven't labelled it as such, to be honest. In terms of kind of isotonic, I don't really know whether or not it's mainly a marketing term. I think there's basically there's a kind of a medical meaning to the word isotonic, and it's something along the lines of it's got similar kind of concentrations of salts or sugars as kind of like the human body has. But that's not a very precise scientific term. So I don't know how much of this is kind of like marketing versus science. But certainly if you are an athlete or you do sport or that kind of thing, often you will be drinking something that's labelled isotonic afterwards to kind of try and rehydrate you a bit quicker. Now, as I say, I'm not an expert. I don't know how much of this is marketing versus quote unquote actual science. But yes, that's the story at least.
Well, there you go. And as I said, there's a real world example here. Our friend Sarah, she ran a half marathon and she was handed one of these Erdinger Alkoholfrei at the end of the race to help rehydrate her because it's isotonic. So it wasn't seen as a beer in any sense, even though it clearly is. So just before we do open up then, it is a low alcohol beer. It says alcohol-free on the label, but 0.5%. It's a 500ml bottle, and it's a wheat beer. Now, Pete, is this our first wheat beer that we've tried?
Yes, it is.
There we go. So you can find it, as I say, in most places, or even everywhere. £2 in Morrison's. So, it's kind of the upper end, I suppose, but hopefully the quality speaks and justifies that. Let's go in and give it a taste. So, on the first pour, it's got a a really very nice head coming through there. Really quite full and thick. It's a lovely kind of golden, almost honey colour.
It's quite pale, yes.
Yes, it's quite pale, and it's not crystal clear. It's kind of slightly cloudy, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a definite haze there.
But good carbonation, and as I say, forming into a very nice head there that really is hanging around as well. Let's get in and have a smell.
So immediately, there's a ton of kind of maltiness to that smell. It's really quite strong.
Yeah, it's very inviting. It's got a really, quite sweet actually. It's slightly yeasty, very malty, slightly biscuity. It feels like it's going to be very full in flavour. If the smell is anything to go by, the taste is going to pack a wallop.
Oh, I tell you what, that tastes almost exactly like it smells, which is a good thing.
It really does.
So again, very malty, a little bit sweet. So it's certainly sweeter than most beers that you will drink, standard beers.
Yeah. I think that sweetness is nice because it's clearly doing quite a lot for the body. It's got a really good body, actually. It doesn't feel thick, but it feels satisfying and it fills the mouth in a very nice way. But the sweetness isn't like a kind of cloying sweetness, but there is some bitterness there that comes through. To me, it's the sweeter end, but it feels quite balanced.
It is quite balanced. There's a touch of bitterness there. There's definitely some herbal and citrus notes coming from the hops as well.
Now, the aftertaste is interesting because, like a lot of NoLo beers, and particularly lagers, this is where they are noticeably missing something because the bitterness just kind of disappears. Here it lingers quite a while. It's quite nice. I often get that slightly soapiness coming through, and I'm not getting that here, which is really nice. So I think that's quite satisfying. I do find myself going back for more.
It's a nice aftertaste, absolutely. There's no unpleasant flavours there like you sometimes get. It's good. I mean, overall, it's a very tasty drink. It almost tastes like it could be healthy as well. I'm making no medical claims, obviously, but it tastes good. And you can just imagine at the end of like a long run or something, or like playing a game of football, having one of these afterwards, I can totally see that hitting the spot.
But I tell you what, if you didn't know the brand and you were handed this and it doesn't mention that it's a beer and you drank that, you'd be surprised what had come out of the bottle. It's clearly a beer. It's clearly a beer.
It is a beer, and it's got a decent amount of flavour. It is sweeter than you might expect. So I think that's something to bear in mind when you do try this, because if you're expecting essentially a beer, this level of sweetness is going to surprise you. And I think maybe that's why it doesn't have the word beer on the label, which it doesn't. It just calls itself a refreshing isotonic drink, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Okay, so as I say, this is a 500ml bottle. There's 125 calories, 26.5 grams of carbs, not gluten-free, as we said, but it is vegan. Sugar, you get 4 teaspoons in the bottle. So, it is on the slightly higher end for a beer. We also have the ingredients: water, wheat malt, barley malt, hops, yeast, carbon dioxide, so no great surprises there, but it does contain vitamins B9 and B12, so that's 25% of your recommended daily amount for each, which is good, but it's unclear where the B9 and B12 come from.
Yeah, so normal beer brewing is not a source of vitamin B12. So I don't know if it's added to it. I don't know if there's like some sort of secondary fermentation, sort of microbial fermentation, which can produce B12. But yeah, it's just not very obvious where it is, because most beer doesn't have vitamin B12 unless it's been fortified as such.
Now, just to say about the producer, it's Erdinger, so they are known for their Weissen, their wheat beers, since 1886. The brewery is based in the town of Erding, hence the name, which is near Munich in Bavaria. So Erdinger is like saying a Londoner from someone, if they're from London. So it's the town of Erding. There we are. So, Pete, I'm going to come to you first of all. What do you think? Is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
So with the proviso that it is sweet, and so if you are expecting a crisp kind of lagery experience, this is
Yeah.
not the beer for you. But
Yeah.
if you want something that is very tasty and is beery, then yeah, I think it does a really good job. And apparently I can get some of my vitamin B12. As a vegan, I need to worry about my B12 intake. So
Absolutely.
yes, it is very tasty. It's a little bit pricey at £2, but not overly so. It's not ridiculous. So yeah, thumbs up from me.
Nice. I'm on the same page, actually. Yes, I think if you approach this for a refreshing, crisp lager or pilsner, you would be slightly disappointed because of that sweetness. But the sweetness does so much. Those sugars do so much for the body. I think it makes it very satisfying. It's a thumbs up from me also.
Very good. That is 2 thumbs up for Erdinger Alcohol Frei.
And I'm going back for another taste. I like it. So we're going to resume our rankings, our top 10 list, and we're going to move to 6th place with Peroni Nastro Azzurro 0.0% lager. Now, we're actually going to do this one as a tasting as well, but that wasn't our original plan. Now, originally, we were going to space them out a little bit more and do another lager that pops up in a few spots' time. But we could not find it, or at least I couldn't find it anywhere. And I've been running around like a nutter, trying to go to all these different supermarkets to pick up that drink, which I'll get to when we get to its point on the top 10 list. So for now, we're going straight into another tasting. As I say, Peroni Nastro Azzurro. It is from Italy. It's an alcohol-free lager. It's 0.0% ABV, as the label says. It's in a 330ml bottle. We bought this ourselves. It's at Morrison's. We got it for £4.50 for 4. But I think what we need to do is actually open it up, Pete. Should we do that? Let's get in.
Absolutely.
So first thing to mention here is that there is a little bit of head forming there. But not really hanging around too much. It's already starting to go, but it's very crystal clear. It looks very, very crisp, quite light in colour, nice kind of yellowish, not too pale, but very, very clear.
Yeah, looks good.
You got some nice carbonation going in on the smell. I mean, it smells like a very nice crisp lager, actually.
There's a touch of citrus is the first thing that I am smelling. And maybe a little bit more citrusy hops rather than malt, although there is an undercurrent of malt there as well.
There is a little bit of malt, you're right. I mean, it's difficult coming straight off of tasting the Erdinger, which was very malty, to then this one. But it is there. And actually, it's there at, I think, a very pleasing level. The ingredients are water, barley malt, maize, hops, and natural flavours. So we've got maize in there as well as hops and the malt as well.
So it's that maize that's going to mean that it doesn't taste particularly malty, because the maize will add those sugars that the yeast is going to be using. But it will mean that the body isn't quite as malty and full. And that's intentional, because you'll end up with a crisper lager rather than a maltier one.
Yes, good point. Well, let's go in on a taste.
So, as I kind of expected, initially, it's crisp. Mouth feels kind of medium. It's not too thick, not too thin. There's body to it. There's a substance to it. Again, the malt is very much a background flavour.
It's interesting because the smell had quite a strong intensity. Not, overpowering or anything, but it was definitely there. When I taste it, I find myself fighting a little bit to find what is there. There are flavours there, but they are quite... I mean, it's not an in-your-face lager at all, which I suppose, standard Peroni isn't too much either. But I'm a little surprised at how much I'm searching for it. It's not jumping out to me.
I think it's a pretty good version of the kind of style that they're trying to create, which is a crisp lager, not too much sweetness. There's a low level of bitterness as well. Essentially, what they're after is that kind of refreshing vibe. And I think that it does it very well.
So, as I say, it's a 330ml bottle, 76 calories in there. There's 18.5 grams of carbs. It is vegan. It's not gluten-free. That's all that barley malt. It's not terribly priced. I mean, it's £1 to £1.50 a bottle, depending on the quantity and the retailer. You can find it online for £2.50 at one independent online shop. So,
which is a lot. That's more than double.
Yes, it is a lot.
You do need to make sure you're buying it from the supermarkets, because that's the way that you're going to get like a decent value out of it. Because right. £2.50 is, I don't know, it's kind of taking the mick a little bit, isn't it?
Well, the question is why? Why would you bother when it's so widely available? You can get it in, I would imagine, every supermarket. I mean, everyone I looked at, you could find it quite easily. It's produced in Rome by Peroni, but the parent company to them is Asahi. So we're on the same page as we were before. But it is a zero equivalent to their standard Nastro Azzurro lager, which is a pretty big seller. This version was released in 2022. It replaces Peroni Libera, which had pretty mixed reviews. I won't go into them. Don't worry about it because you can't get it anymore. But pretty mixed stuff. Now, Pete, you did some digging and you found out an interesting thing about the name, didn't you?
So Nastro Azzurro is the Italian for blue ribbon. And it's basically named after the blue riband, which is a kind of unofficial competition or prize to do with transatlantic crossings back in the days of ocean liners. Yes. And essentially the highest average speed for crossing the transatlantic crossing, people were kind of leapfrogging one another. And you sort of say, if you're the fastest one, you've got the blue riband. And this was named after, anyway, the SS Rex, which was an Italian ocean liner. Yeah. So it was very much kind of a national pride kind of thing. That was back in the 30s. So yes, that was Nastro Azzurro, of which this is the zero version.
Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard for us to contextualise that, but this was quite a big deal, actually. People really knew about this on the street, and it was definitely a source of national pride, for sure. Let me just touch on some of the stats for this, because Peroni 0.0, as this is, was the number one new beer launch when it launched in 2019. While shortly after its 2022 launch across Europe, it quickly reached over 5% of the Peroni brand's total global sales, with 2.96 million in value sales. Now, that's weird considering some of the other stats that we've seen, but that was one of the stats I saw. I'm sure that must be per region or per area, because it cropped up time and time again. It's now available in 28 countries, including Australia, Canada, and others, it says. Now, it entered the US market in 2023 with actually a pretty strong early performance. And I can kind of see why, because it isn't as flavoursome as perhaps the German beers. It might sit quite well with the, let's be kind and say, the weaker flavoured American beers as well. It might sit somewhere in the middle. So it's kind of doing okay wherever it seems to be landing. But the question, Pete, is what do you think? Are you going to give it our thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I was thinking about this because it is a nice beer. It is nice. I'm enjoying it. It is crisp and it's refreshing, and there is flavour to it. There's just enough malt for it to be nice. There's a citrusy hop character. It's very hard to get excited about another decent macro NoLo lager like this. There are lots of competitors who do just as good a job as this. Not necessarily very much better, and occasionally a fair bit worse. Right. I am going to give this a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Because it's a good drink. I'm just kind of, it's not a resounding one. It does the job. It does a good enough job, and I like it. So yes, thumbs up.
Very nice. Again, I'm on the same page as you, and for the same reasons. We didn't talk much about the aftertaste because, we said it was quite inoffensive, that there's a little bit of bitterness there. It dissipates very quickly for me. It doesn't quite have enough oomph to be really stunning, really refreshing, or really tasty, or really super convincing if you were to stand it up against an alcoholic version. But it's pretty good. It's pretty nice. It's, as you say, quite inoffensive. Like, it's fairly balanced. There's a bit of bitterness there. There's sort of a little bit of sweetness, bit of maltiness. It is good, and it's a thumbs up from me as well. But again, it's just not massively resounding. I'm not super excited by it either. But imagine yourself on a nice sunny day, sat in the garden with this. I think you'd be pretty happy. So yeah, thumbs up from me as well.
So that's 2 thumbs up for Peroni Nastro Azzurro Zero.
And we're going to pick up our top 10 rankings with 5th place, which is Athletic Brewing. Now, this is an independent American craft brewery that focuses exclusively on non-alcoholic beer. And it's actually grown to be quite a dominant player in the US, but as we'll see elsewhere, particularly with its Run Wild IPA, which is kind of frequently cited as its bestseller. So if that's the emblematic one, Pete, have you tried it?
No, I've not tried any of the Athletic Brewing beers yet. I have seen them here and there, but haven't quite got around to it. And I think it's a problem, really. It's just that there's so many beers out there at the moment. There's no particular reason I haven't had it yet. It's just I haven't quite got around to it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I haven't tried it either. I didn't realise it was such a big global player until I started putting this list together. And now I'm slightly more inclined to try it to see what's going on. And really, I have no excuse not to. It's available online at specialists in the UK, but you can also find it at Tesco and the larger M&S stores as well. Possibly smaller ones, but we know it's in some of the large ones as well. Now, the brand has 4 core beers that are always available, that they're always making. So the Run Wild IPA, Upside Dawn Golden, Free Wave Hazy IPA, and Athletic Light. But they also make seasonal and limited release beers, so the total number of beer options that they offer isn't fixed, and it's hard to pin down at any one time. Just lastly, they also collaborate with other brewers as well and other brands to create special releases. So, you know, they're kind of out there, and you could probably find different iterations. We probably need to start off with our tasting at some point with one of their more emblematic, one of their standard ones.
Yep, sounds like a plan.
So they're brewed in Milford, Connecticut, and they claim that their brewery is the largest dedicated non-alcoholic brewery in the world. They've also got a second one in San Diego, which means that they can cover both coasts, and they sell across America, but they do sell beyond America as well, but it's hard to kind of pin down exactly where they sell to and what those markets are. We know we can get it some places in the UK, but across Europe, not sure, couldn't quite tell. Now, there was one problem that I found in trying to pop them onto this list or not, and it's the problem with calculating their sales, because they don't distinguish between their brands. Now, you might think that's fine, but if so, should we include Lucky Saint's lager alongside their IPA and their lemon lager as well? And would that push Lucky Saint higher up the list? So just putting it out there, Pete, it's potentially a problem that it's on the list, but I wanted to slot it in because it does seem to be a big seller in America, and it's definitely pushed into other markets and seems to be doing well, but a little hard to pin down.
Yeah, I think that's just a fundamental problem with compiling lists like this, to be honest. As we said at the start of the episode, there's a limited amount of information out there, so you've got to do a little bit of kind of guesswork, I reckon.
Let's move on to 4th place, Budweiser Zero. So this is another top seller from AB InBev. It's obviously the Budweiser brand, and it's pretty massive. They've got a huge distribution network. They've got a lot of marketing money behind them. It's a very well-known non-alcoholic option, but this is the one that we were attempting to do a tasting from, and I could not find it anywhere. I live in Worthing on the south coast, and I don't know where sells it, even if their website says they do. The shops don't seem to have them. So this is one we were going to do a tasting for, but we're not going to.
So there's a couple of possible explanations for this. I think one is more likely than the other. The first explanation is that it's so popular that it just sells out everywhere and demand exceeds supply.
Interesting.
I think the more likely explanation is that it's just not very good, and perhaps they are either not producing it because it doesn't sell, or they are looking to reformulate it. So we actually had this last year, I believe, when we were doing a little kind of like test for the podcast. We
did a kind of test
tasting.
episode that we'd never released, and we did it as a tasting, didn't we?
Absolutely. And our opinion of it was not particularly high. So it just doesn't really taste of very much. And you could argue that it's quite a good version of something like Bud Light, and it replicates it very well. And I think I did think that if you liked Bud Light for whatever reason is in your head, then you'll probably like this one. But if you compare it to, like, particularly the more recent NoLo lagers, the macro ones, the big brand ones, they've got a flavour to them and they taste like beer. And Bud Zero, there is that joke about tasting close to water. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing. And it's pretty accurate when it comes to Bud Zero. Yeah,
that's my overriding memory of it as well, that it emulates a style of beer, Bud Light, that I wouldn't choose. So, it's an open question if it does a good job on that or not. But it's not to my taste. And I think we both gave it a thumbs down, if memory serves. I don't want to be held to that, and actually it doesn't matter because that episode's not going out. That was a test one. But look, let me fill you in, because if you do find it and you want to give it a try, or if that is the sort of style that you like, fair enough. It's up to you. We had it in 330ml cans. It is a zero beer, so ABV. Morrison's used to sell it for $3.75 for 4, so 94p per can. It was pretty, light coloured, pretty clear. A little bit of carbonation, a little bit of head, nothing to write home about on any of those fronts. It was slightly biscuity, a little bit of malt coming through, but not very intense at all. And for the taste, the main notes that we had were it was thin, it was very light, and it was very thin. We just kind of have said that several times. Crisp, but not much to it, and no hop character. So, it's not ever going to be our best, most glowing review. But someone might like that. It might be to someone's taste. I suppose it's horses for courses, isn't it, Pete?
No, it is true that, at the end of the day, you're after a particular experience when you're drinking a NoLo beer or any other kind of beverage. And if it ticks the boxes for what you're expecting and what you want, that's fine. That's not a problem. Yeah. As I say, I think, generally speaking, there are much better beers out there in the NoLo space from similarly large companies that I think that's the reason that you can't find Budweiser Zero anymore, basically, because I think it doesn't sell. This is a guess, but that's my opinion on it.
Fair enough, yeah. Well, just to let you know then, so there's 46 calories per can. There's 11 grams of carbs. It is vegan. It's not gluten-free. The ingredients are water, barley malt, rice, hops, and natural flavours. Just tell us about the rice. What's that about?
So that's in the beer for exactly the same reason as the maize was in the Peroni earlier on. So essentially, you want sugars, but you don't want the malt character, and you can get that from other ingredients, two of which are rice and maize or corn.
Okay. It's also got ascorbic acid in, which you've schooled us before on, is a preservative, and it's basically vitamin C.
Indeed.
And moving on to third place, we have Corona Zero.
Very nice.
Zero with a C, not with a Z. Now, we actually reviewed this in episode 5. Can you remember your thoughts on it, Pete?
I remember enjoying it. Again, another big macro NoLo lager, which is actually pretty good. Does a great job, actually, in this particular case, of emulating its standard counterpart.
Yeah, I had one yesterday, actually, and I really enjoyed it again. I think it's really, really balanced. It's got a nice crispness. It really works as a lager. For me, it does that same job that we were looking for in the Peroni, just a bit more. So, quite a big fan of it. It is available to buy in Asda, Morrison's, Waitrose, Tesco, Sainsbury's, basically everywhere. It's another one that's owned by the parent company AB InBev. So it's been growing very steadily. Triple-digit growth is kind of as much as I could pin that down to. It's also, though, gaining quite a lot of visibility by how they're marketing it or positioning it. It's the first beer brand to sponsor the Olympic Games in 2024. Did you know that?
I didn't. It kind of makes sense if you give it more like a moment's thought, though, because obviously, if you've got like a sporty, athletic kind of set of events, And then you get in, I don't know, Carlsberg Special Brew or something to sponsor it. That's not really going to work. Whereas, obviously, if you've got something which is quote unquote healthier, it doesn't have any alcohol in it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of money swilling around in beer marketing.
Well, but then you might think that's a trick that the Erdinger alcohol fry might try, seeing as it markets itself as an isotonic drink. I don't know, food for thought.
I'd say the main difference between those two brands is that Erdinger is an independent brewery. And so when you're talking Olympic levels of money, you're looking at someone like AB InBev, who are just enormous. And as we've previously mentioned, owns multiple brands.
Yeah, they're the multinationals that I was talking about in the intro, really. They're also a global partner of the World Surf League, with a presence at many of its events in 2025. So again, they are pushing into new areas and really trying to get this out there and established. And Corona Zero is a major driver of AB InBev's growing non-alcoholic portfolio, which overall saw a 33% revenue increase recently, so in one of the more recent periods. Now, again, slightly nebulous what all that means, but clearly it's becoming important to a very large company, and this is perhaps the brand that's right at the front of that. Moving on, we're going to come to second place, which is Guinness Zero, or as I always confusingly call it, Guinness 0.0, because that's what it feels like it should be.
Right.
Again, we reviewed this, we tasted this in episode 2. Pete, what were your impressions? What do we think?
At the risk of sounding like a stuck record, it does a very good job of replicating its standard counterpart, but actually a very good job. We've seen that lager is essentially a solved problem when it comes to doing that. It's never going to be exactly the same. The alcohol does do stuff that is very hard to replicate, but there aren't that many non-lager beers that offer essentially 95% of the experience. And Guinness does. It's a really good job. They must have spent a lot of time and money in devising the recipe for it, and they've done a stand-up job.
If you're not familiar somehow with Guinness, it's a stout, it's Irish. The company claims this zero version has attracted 500,000 new consumers in 2023. I would imagine that is growing all the time because it's hot on the lips of anyone who talks about if NoLos are any good or not. The global market share, Guinness Zero represents 3% of all global Guinness sales. And if you think of Guinness being one of the big sellers worldwide, it's a pretty large indicator of how well it's doing as a brand.
So 3% doesn't sound that much, but yes, as you say, in absolute sales, that is a lot of no and low, and in particularly in this case, zero alcohol drinks that are being sold. 3% of a very large number is still a very large number.
That's right. And, you know, this will blow your mind as well. Sales doubled in Europe last year. So if that's the trend, things really are pushing, you know, all the way up, making their shareholders and their board very happy, I'm sure. It's the UK's top-selling non-alcoholic beer and holds nearly 30% of the UK's non-alcoholic beer market share. 30%. That seems a lot, doesn't it? But I can kind of believe it.
That seems like an implausibly large amount. So I wonder if Mr. Guinness is telling a few porkies there. But if you imagine like 1 in every 3 non-alcoholic beer drunk in the UK is Guinness, maybe. I mean, you know, I'm no expert.
I mean, I can believe it. That's the thing. That I can believe that there are people out there, plenty of people that would never dream of buying any other NoLo, but they know that's a decent one. And so they do.
It is a very good one. It is a very good one.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Diageo, the owners, they are actually investing 30 million euros to boost production capacity specifically for their zero stout. So that is, again, another indicator of just how well they're doing with it. Okay, we know what we think of Guinness. It was 2 thumbs up at the time. It's a very strong player. I think it's a worthy number 2 spot, isn't it, in our list?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at individual drinks, and obviously Guinness sell a lot of drinks, and 95% of that must be Guinness Stout. They do other things as well. So they do like a lager, which, you know, don't really see very much. And they do versions of their stout. But when you're talking about such a massive global brand, having the second place NoLo beer coming from that brand makes a lot of sense.
And so, folks, we now come to first place on our list of the top 10 global best-selling NoLo beers. Let's have a big fanfare. Let's have a drum roll. It is Heineken 0.0. There you go.
Absolutely. Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think last episode, you asked me to guess what one of the most popular ones would be. I think I guessed Heineken. And
I think you did.
It's actually pretty obvious when you actually give it some thought why that is. Not least because they have put so much money into promoting it, like massive amounts.
Well, it's a massive brand anyway, globally. Massive. So to stand a drink up against a NoLo version up against their standard Heineken, there's going to be a lot of kind of carryover for the brand, maybe loyalty to it. At least you know what you're in store for. So you can see that with this big push that they've done to really push it out there into the global market, I mean, it does make sense. But we are going to do it as a full tasting.
Sounds good.
So Heineken 0.0, it is a 330ml can or bottle in some cases. It's a lager. We bought this for £4.50 for 4 at Morrison's. As I say, it's 0.0, so there's no alcohol. If there is, it's so trace amounts that they don't list it. I think we should open it up and get stuck in. What do you think, Pete?
Great. Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so first impressions are that it forms a really nice foamy head, just like you'd like from a lager, really. Nice carbonation rising up through what is a very clear, crystal clear, and quite golden.
It's quite an intense gold, actually, compared to some of the lagers you get out there. Yeah, it's very nice.
What about the smell? Oh, yeah. So, maltiness, but it's very sweet. In a nice way. There's a slight sourness coming through.
It pretty much smells how you'd expect it to, and I think it smells like a Heineken, a standard Heineken does as well. There's a definite kind of smell there, almost not quite a funk, because it's not unpleasant. It is very pleasant, but yes, it's certainly a Heineken.
Definitely a Heineken. They've stood it up against the standard version for good reason, I think. Let's go for a taste. Okay, so I'm getting a really nice kind of crisp lager feel. It has a nice mouthfeel. It's not too thick. I mean, you wouldn't expect it to be, but it's quite satisfying. The bubbles feel really small. Now, we've touched on this before when we were talking about sparkling wines, but that matters because actually it kind of adds a bit of body without it making it heavy. So it works quite well, but it is quite a light body. And it's got almost a herbal taste to it.
There's certainly a herbal kind of touch from the hops there. There's more malt to this than there was to the previous beer, the Peroni, which uses corn or maize in as well. I believe this is all malt for its kind of the sugars that are in there. And you do feel that in the body in terms of this slightly thicker, and there's a touch more malt to it. But being a lager, it's not malt forward in the same way that an ale might be. But it is very nice.
It is very nice. That bitterness is there, and I find that quite satisfying, actually. In the aftertaste, it is there for a while, and again, it does go quite quick. I mean, this might just be what NoLo's do.
I can definitely get a little bit of astringency. There's a definite sense for me for sort of the drying of my mouth that makes me want to drink some more of it. So it's quite pleasing to my palate in that way.
It's a good point. I am going back for more. Okay, so there's 63 calories per 330ml can, which is half the standard Heineken, actually. So it is a lower calorie version. There's 15 grams of carbs. It is vegan. It's not gluten-free. Again, we'd expect this because the ingredients are water, malted barley, hop extract, and natural flavourings. Those mysterious natural flavourings. For sugar, there's about 4 grams, so that's 1 teaspoon, so pretty low. Now, this is produced by Heineken. They're a Dutch brewery, of course. Worldwide, they launched this in 2017, which is actually pretty early for a lot of NoLos that are still going on that original recipe. So they're doing quite well. In terms of sales, I mean, they see a 14% growth for the first half of 2024 on this brand, this Zero brand. 11% global sales increase in the third quarter. So, it's pushing up and up and up. But again, it might seem like small numbers, but small percentages of really big numbers like these big global companies have, they are big numbers. And actually, their Zero category represents over 4% of their total output. So, it's a major part of their business because of the scales involved.
That is a lot of NoLo beer.
Exactly. Now, you might have an issue with what I'm going to say next, because they claim, or rather I found from several different sources, that Heineken holds 18% global share of the non-alcoholic beer market. 18% globally.
Oh, like I said with Guinness, that seems awfully high. So essentially, 1 in every 5 beers being drunk that are NoLo around the world are Heineken, or at least maybe owned by Heineken in terms of whatever brand that is. Yeah, it just seems a little high. I mean, I've got no evidence to say that it's false at all. It seems like an unrealistically high number. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm naturally sceptical, but I'm not going to bet my house on this being wrong.
It's not a hill you're going to die
Indeed.
on, for sure. Well, look, I mean, yes, in many senses, that does seem unnaturally high. When you start looking at some of the stats, we might be able to unpick it. So about 5% of the beer market in key European regions, whatever that means, but, the big ones probably, is for Heineken Zero, and up to 10% in markets like Spain and the Netherlands. Now, this also reveals that because they're such a big brand globally, they might be the only NoLo on offer in certain countries. So, of course, they have excellent market penetration if they're the only one, and that might be skewing these stats. Again, really difficult to weigh all of this up.
Okay.
One thing we can be sure of, though, it's the top-selling non-alcoholic beer in the UK, it says. But I suspect meaning lager, because Guinness makes a similar claim. But they say that there's sales are going up 25% for every period, so 4 periods in a year. They really are seeing a lot of return from this. One thing to note, the expansion of the availability. So they have just celebrated there being 1,000 Heineken Zero taps in the UK in pubs. So, they're really pushing that out into pubs now. And again, I think that's becoming quite common that we can see it in bars and pubs across the land.
Yeah, 1,000 taps, that's quite a lot. Essentially what we're saying is 1,000 bars and pubs have Heineken Zero on tap in the UK, and that's a lot.
One more thing I want to touch on, that's enough stats, but this is the brand that Heineken have sponsored Formula One globally around the world with. Now, they haven't done that with their standard Heineken. It is specifically Heineken Zero that they've done that with.
It's just another kind of piece of evidence, really, isn't it, that they're throwing a lot of money behind it. I mean, sponsoring Formula One, that you're talking tens and tens of millions of dollars or pounds per year. And clearly they have a lot of confidence, not only in their own beer, but also just kind of in the sector as a whole, in the idea that there's a big audience out there. And so that's why this kind of thing is good, even if you don't like lager or even if you don't like Heineken. The fact that such a major player is investing so much money into the NoLo drinks market means that they are confident it's going to go up and up, which means more availability for us, even if you don't like it.
So there we have it. We've got the ultimate test, what we think of it. Our ranking, Pete. So I'm going to kick things off with you. What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'd completely forgotten we hadn't actually given it a thumbs up, thumbs down.
It's the only marker that counts.
Indeed. So long story short, yes, it's a thumbs up. It's a nice drink, in common with quite a few now. So we've got a bit of embarrassment of riches when it comes to NoLo lagers. And yeah, this is successful for good reason, because it tastes good and it replicates the Heineken experience pretty well as you could be expected anyway compared to its peers. So yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, I agree. Heineken isn't necessarily my first choice for a lager. I do quite like a lager, but they've created a NoLo that stands up very well to their standard Heineken lager. And, that's a good lager, so it's fine. Specifically for it as a NoLo, I think it's very successful. It's nicely balanced. It's not too in your face. You can see why it's such a easy go-to for so many people. And it would be for me. I would buy this quite happily, very happy with it. So it's a thumbs up from me also.
Excellent. So it's 2 thumbs up for Heineken Zero.
Now, just to wrap things up, Pete, what do you think about this as a concept? Bringing this weird list together with all these different kind of factors and all of that. What have we learned? What does it kind of reveal to us about NoLos? And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So my first thought is twofold. Firstly, the biggest sellers are lagers in the NoLo beer space, and that's basically what you'd expect. I'm kind of surprised that there's anything else other than lager and Guinness, to be honest. So it's quite nice to see something else from Athletic Brewing with their kind of ales, pale ales, IPAs, that kind of thing. So that's one thing. I think another thing as well is that it is very difficult to really make any kind of objective list of this is the top 10. So I think it always involves a certain amount of interpretation.
Yeah, it's been an interesting process for me. I kind of agree. Like, there weren't loads of surprises. I was more surprised about what was omitted than what was included. And it kind of reinforces my assumptions about what would be successful and what isn't. But it's nice to see that outlier from Athletic. But certainly as a diversion, just to approach NoLos from a different angle. What an interesting thing to actually consider that worldwide, NoLos are here, that they're doing well, that they've been accepted not just in our culture in the UK, but, lots of different cultures as well. Clearly, they are finding their place with lots of different groups of people. That also means that the future can only be bright, surely.
We've crossed the Rubicon now in terms of NoLos. There is no going back. And that can only be a good thing if you are looking for alternatives to alcoholic drinks like these. So, I think that's just straightforwardly good news.
So, there you have it. The official Minus the Hangover top 10 list of best-selling NoLo beers, as definitive as I could make it, and I would hope an interesting way to explore, quite literally, the world of NoLos.
Indeed. And yes, I look forward to the wines and spirit versions as well.
You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. And please do spread the word.
And if you are on Apple or Spotify, do give us a review.
To that end, you can follow us on X or Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, Linktree, all the socials. Just search @MinusTheHangover, all one word. And if you've got a question you'd like to put to us or a drink you'd like us to review, please do get in touch. So, Pete, what's on the drinks menu next episode?
So 3 more drinks. Firstly, we'll be doing Meisel's Weiss alcohol-free Hefeweiss beer, which I think is the full name. I hope it isn't even longer than that. Then our first spirit that we'll be featuring on the podcast. It is Captain Morgan Spiced Gold 0%. So that describes itself as an alcohol-free spirit. It's essentially a rum equivalent, as you might expect from the Captain Morgan brand. And then finally, we've got a brand of cider that you can get in Aldi. It is Alska or Elska Nordic Berries alcohol-free cider.
Very nice. Looking forward to that. So there we have it. Thanks for joining us at Minus the Hangover with me, Christoph Phillips.
And me, Pete Mason.
Have a great week and enjoy whatever drink takes your fancy. Minus the Hangover. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, Chris, this is Minus the Hangover, episode 8, After Hours.
That's right.
So it's been a week since we recorded episode 8, where you presented our list of best-selling NoLo beers worldwide.
That's right, yeah.
We've listened back to that episode, and we're here to talk about it and anything else that's come up in the meantime.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I just want to say before we jump in, you might hear my cat Lenny going a little bit mad and meowing.
Oh dear.
he's been left on his own all day, and actually quite a lot lately, and he gets ever so lonely. So, Pete, at least you know why. That's why. He's not actually as neglected as he would have you believe, I promise you.
You haven't shut him in the wardrobe or anything like that.
No, he's got the run of the house, but he just wants a lap. That's all he wants.
Fair enough. Okay, so yes, episode 8. Any reflections?
Well, obviously this was an episode that I led, and it was quite a big one, actually, wasn't it?
Yes.
Listening back to it, I hope I was able to capture the sense of that it was actually quite tricky to put that list together, and but do a good enough job. I don't know. I can't really judge that, so it's up to you, man. What did you think? I suppose that's the real question.
Yeah, so when we first talked about this, I think you came up with the idea, and we both thought that it was quite a nice kind of fluffy episode. Make a list, find out for some kind of fun facts about some beers, and it wouldn't take very long to put to.
Yes, a kind of romp around the world, if you like.
Exactly that. Whereas actually, I think you made a rod for your own back, quite frankly.
There's a surprise.
Because, it's really, really, really difficult to get hold of any solid information about how all of these beers sell in relation to each other.
Yeah, and, I was really reluctant to have that whole kind of preamble at the start. But there was just no way round it. I had to kind of make the point that it's a list, and I know that seems like such a trifling distinction. Like, what difference does it make?
Or a cop out. Cop out.
Well, or a cop out, exactly. But that was the thing. It's like, look, I would rather throw my hands in the air, own it, and say, okay, it's as definitive as it can be, but it's not definitive. It's just kind of my best stab at doing it. And like you say, we had talked about it being this light and fluffy thing, and I had planned my time accordingly, and had found myself going, this is taking ages and a lot of work. So you're completely right to flag that up.
It's kind of difficult as a listener to really appreciate quite how hard it is as well. I mean, if you actually go online, there are no kind of league tables, as it were. It's not as if it's like the Premiership table or something like that. You know exactly who's at number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on.
I'll just pop it into Google and I'll quickly and easily lift this data, and that'll be sacrosanct. And there you go, Bob's your uncle. That's our episode.
It just doesn't exist, basically.
No.
And, I know there's at least kind of like 2 really good reasons for that, because I had a quick look at one specific fact. So you had to look up dozens of different facts about stuff.
Hundreds, I would say. Hundreds.
And there's only kind of like one thing that I wanted to look up, which was the...
So that was just the very first few minutes of After Hours for episode 8. If you'd like to listen to the rest, that's going to be released as its own mini episode in 1 week's time. So do check it out. Not least that it includes a whole cut scene, as it were, from the list, the notable mentions and omissions that didn't quite make the cut for time, but very much worth checking out. So find that episode next week.